find the most horrible one and get it over and done with, so that from then on everything else is easier, more enjoyable, and you've got that, hey, I did that thing. I was hating the idea of it, and I've done it anyway.
Absolutely right. And once you've got over the big, horrible, gnarly, scary animal with big teeth, which is the first thing that you need to do on a Monday morning, it's so much easier to deal with the smaller things. So you just kind of knock those over relatively easily. But also just give yourself an hour at a time. So I'm going to do 1 hour on this thing and see what progress I make. And I'll just commit the hour to it. And when you're that committed to it, it'll be amazing how much you can actually achieve.
Oh, right. So you don't say, right, I'm gonna do this thing until it's complete. You say, right, I'm going to devote the next hour to this thing, and then crack on as much as you can.
And then at the end of the hour, sit back and review and think, look, where was I at 9 o'clock at the start of the day? Well, I hadn't even started. Now at 10 o'clock. Oh my God, I've made some good progress here. Oh wow, I understand the situation far better. I understand the problem that we're trying to face. I've already had some ideas of how we're going to solve it. I've already asked help from two people to do that. This is feeling much better.
Oh, right. I get it. Yeah. So you've got a milestone. So it's not like a millstone around your neck. God, I'm going to be working on this problem for the next 6 weeks. It's I'm doing an hour on this. Okay, an hour isn't too long. Even if it's something I hate, I can do it for an hour. End of the hour, you review where you are, and you're going, oh, actually, I made a reasonable amount of progress on this. Hey, this is not as bad as I was feeling.
I was given a great piece of advice once, which is really what I'm saying here. When I had a big, gnarly problem and I didn't know how to handle it, and it was so big, it was towering in front of me. It was blocking out the sunlight from my vision. And the question that was asked of me was, how do you eat an elephant?
How do you eat an elephant?
One leg at a time.
Nice. Nice. Yep.
So don't try and swallow the whole big animal in one go. Just break a bit off and tackle that bit first. And once you've done that after your first hour or whatever it is, you'll feel you made so much more progress and had a better way. And you'll have learned how to tackle the next leg and the third leg and the fourth leg.
Got it. Yeah. That makes sense. So basically, have a plan. Make sure your plan is, make it a SMART plan. What was the word you used? Specific, measurable, achievable,
realistic, and time-bound.
Time-bound, yeah. Okay.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do, Keith. I have a template for a plan which sets this out. I'm going to add that onto the gift that I'm giving away to one of the listeners of the show today, because I think that's so important. That unless you have a plan and you document it and you write it down and you get others to buy into it and you ask for help and support, people's time or resources to do it, you're never going to get there. So let me give that as a free download as well. Let me give everyone who's listening the template for a plan.
Oh, that is fantastic. That's adding value right there. And as I mentioned earlier, Nick very kindly let me have a look at what he's prepared for you all, and that was not in it. So this is fantastic. Bring it on. Let's see if we can get more in. But yeah, we'll give you all the details on how to get all of that stuff towards the end of the show, and because I know Nick has got a few more bits to nuggets of wisdom to share with us before then. Just a quick reminder: you're listening to the Confidence Alchemist Radio Show with me, the Confidence Alchemist, Keith Blakemore Noble, and my very special guest today, Nick, who is sharing with us his zero to authentic hero process, which he's come up with. He founded the Mandala Leaders group, and he works with a lot of leaders to really help them build up their confidence. So yeah, we're entering it down into about the last 20 minutes or so, Nick. I know you've got a fair amount to cover, so I will shut up now. What's next? So we've decided we need to take our step. We have a plan. Now what?
The third thing that the leaders were telling us in the research that we did earlier in the summer, the third most important thing, which I wanted to talk about today, was to have clarity. Mm-hmm. And it's not just clarity for yourself, but it's clarity for the people that you work with. or for you and your family, or you and your friends, depending on which situation you're considering. But we're talking about leaders. We're talking about leaders of businesses, not-for-profit organisations, even sports clubs and teams. The same is applied across the lot, and we work with each of those brackets. We work with big businesses, small businesses. We work with charitable organisations, and we work with sports teams as well. And it's the same approach. And clarity is required for all of them. And because most people who are lacking in confidence don't have the confidence to do something because they're not quite sure what it is they need to do. And that was clearly coming out in the research that we did. And once you've got your plan, as we've been talking about, it's how you communicate that plan to others, how you can do that really clearly so that everyone knows exactly what they need to do and why that's important to create and achieve the overall goal. Again, back on the sailing analogy from the weekend, we had a crew of 8 people, 6 had never sailed a boat before. And to make the boat go fast in the right direction and to keep it safe, there are lots of jobs that need to be done, from pulling halyards to pulling in sheets to steering the rudder to trimming the sails, and lots of other things as well. But everyone had to have a clear understanding of what their specific task was and how that would help the achievement of the whole boat going in the right direction safely, and what would happen if they didn't do that, what the potential outcome or disaster was going to be. And it's a bit like the great example of when the president went to NASA to look at the space rocket that was going to launch the first man to the moon. And he was walking around and he was seeing all these engineers and all these astronauts who had a really clear view of what it is they were doing and why it was so important. And then he saw a chap who was sweeping the floor. And he asked the guy who was sweeping the floor, "What is it you do here?" And his answer was, "I helped get a man on the moon." Because he understood quite clearly that his job, however large or small, however important or others that some might perceive it, was all contributing towards the overall goal.
Yeah, nice.
And so it's giving clarity to everyone in your team or your business or your group or your church group or your sports team or whatever it is as to why it's important that they do their task and how that contributes towards the overall goal. So that has to be communicated clearly. You have to make sure that the people you're asking to do that task understand exactly what it is they're being asked to do and why.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make sure they've got the necessary skills and resources to do that. Or you help upskill them, or you help change their resources, or you encourage them to find a different way to tackle their resources. And one of the great quotes I like, it's not the resources you have, it's how resourceful you are with them.
Oh, I like the sound of that one. Say that one again, just so our listener catches it.
It's not necessarily how resourceful you are. Sorry, it's not necessarily the resources you have, but it's how resourceful you are with them.
It's not the resources you have, it's how resourceful you are with them.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. That is a great distinction there. I like that.
So asking everyone to understand the wider impacts of what they're doing and ask them and encourage them to seek the support from others. No, we don't have to silo everyone into this is your task, this is what you do and why.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be a collaborative approach.
Right, yes.
But when you find that some people are good at some things and some people are less good at others, then maybe change the roles around to get them the best out of each person, or help upskill them and train them so they can learn what it is they need to do.
Yeah.
And some people like to be told in words, some people like to have it in writing, some people like to look at pictures. So when you're communicating, don't assume that everyone you're communicating this plan to will understand it in the same way you understand it through the same medium, through talking or reading or looking at pictures. Make sure that you give the people the option so they can understand it in different ways.
Absolutely. That's bringing back some awful memories of a particularly bad manager that I had the the good fortune to learn under, shall we say, several years ago. God, yeah, you're absolutely right. He had his way of doing things, representing things. His was very much picture based, and those of us who weren't really good at visualizing stuff, God, we just could not get what he was driving at. We were unable to share our stuff with him, and it was a nightmare. Yeah, you're right there. It really is important to communicate your stuff clearly to your team in a way that they can all understand. And as you say, some use pictures, some use words, some use yeah. Oh God, that was an awful memory to bring back there. You're right.
So
it makes such a difference.
How can you expect your team or your organisation to have confidence in what they're doing if they don't quite understand it? And it's only because you've not communicated it in the way they need to hear it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing is that clarity is needed only after considering all the moving parts and people. For example, instead of imposing your plan, it's worth it's worth taking a coaching approach to the team and asking them how they might think they want to go about doing it and what they can bring to the party and what resources they have and skills that they have and what part of that plan would they like to work on. And that might actually flush out some problems that you're not even aware of because it's in the other office or it's in the other department or it's in manufacturing or suppose, the bit that you do. But it might also bring forward some other creative ideas that you haven't thought of yourself. And by getting the people to contribute what they think they can do and how they might do it into the overall plan, it will have much greater clarity for everyone. May actually come up with some better ideas to do things quicker, cheaper, better. And also, everyone will build confidence that they can do it because they thought of the idea in the first place.
Oh, right. Yes. So you're getting them more involved, getting them more enrolled in the whole thing.
So it's the way you communicate it isn't just telling; it's also asking for their contribution, their input. So they will buy into it more. They might come up with better, more creative ideas. I don't consider myself that creative a person, so I don't talk to a creative person. And they come up with sometimes some weird and wacky off the wall ideas, of course. But sometimes, actually, no, we can't do that. But actually, it makes me think we could do it that way. Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Nice. So here's a question.
That slightly different conversation.
Yeah. So here's a question that's just sprung to mind, and this may be out with the kind of scope of what we're talking about. But so suppose you create your plan, you then share the plan with your team, and you invite them for their input and their feedback and suggestions. Inevitably, there's going to be a time where somebody makes a suggestion and it's either not feasible, not appropriate, or it conflicts with another. For whatever reason, their suggestion can't be incorporated. And they kind of take it personally and, what was even the point in asking me if you're just going to ignore everything I said? How can you kind of turn that around so you don't lose that person? Is there anything that can be done there, or is that completely beyond the scope of what we're looking at here?
I think what has to be done before you ask for people's input is to outline the bigger picture and share the limitation of resources, or to share the time frame in which you have to operate, and then ask them for their contributions within that remit or within those limitations. Because if you say, look, we've got a year to deliver this, and someone says, well, we can build a new machine, it'll take us 10 years to do it, I mean, that's not actually going to help.
Yeah.
So therefore, it's being clear on the goal, and the goal is specific and it's measurable and it is time-bound, and there are limited resources to deliver it. And so therefore, within those parameters, what are the great ideas that you can bring forward, how we can tweak this by 1 or 2%, or how we can change that system so it takes half the time, whatever it is. Within those clear parameters, and you're less likely to be in the situations that you outline where people are going to feel disenfranchised because, yes, you've asked them for an idea, and then you just said no. So it has to be very clearly structured, clearly framed, when you're having the conversation, so that the people in the team have a really clear understanding of the limitations